So this week, the Torah portion steps into the book of Numbers, which is interesting. If you look in the Hebrew, there's Hebrew name for all the books of the Bible in the Torah. And you have Bereshit in the beginning. It's not the names we think of. We have Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. So the book of Numbers in Hebrew is Bamidbar, which means in the wilderness. And I heard somebody who was talking about this and was saying that, how boring does the book of Numbers sound? Like, oh, children, we're going to do a Bible lesson today. What are we going to study? Numbers. Versus if you take the Hebrew and what are we studying? We're talking about in the wilderness. It sounds like an adventure story. It really does. It sounds more exciting, more adventuresome. And Numbers is a book about the journey. It's a book about the journey of the Israelites, but if we apply it to our walk spiritually, it can be a book about our journey too. It can be a book that points us the way in which we are to walk. It can be a book that points the pitfalls to avoid. The places where we don't want to go that way, we want to go this way, because we are learning from people who have gone before us and made that mistake. And it's a book that can really teach us things. When you think of those of you who have been to Israel with us, when we are going on that road that goes down from the Jordan River and we're heading up to Jerusalem, and you take that turn, you're by Jericho, you take that turn, you're heading up through the hills, and you see all these hills that are like, it looks like you're in the desert. It's the Judean desert, Judean wilderness. But it's actually incorrect to call it a desert. It's more correct to call it a wilderness. And a lot of times we think of desert and wilderness as being the same thing, but they're not. A wilderness is a wild, uncultivated land that needs just a few showers in the spring to bloom. Remember the year that we went to Israel and everything was in bloom. We'd never seen Israel like that before. I mean, it's usually dry. It's usually, when we go in the summertime, everything's dried up. But at that time of the year, everything is blossoming. Everything is flourishing. And those desert hills are all green, and they're full of people, Bedouins grazing their flocks and stuff like that. So you look at something like that and say, it might on the surface look like a desert. It might look like it has nothing in it. Why would you ever be out there? But if you just add a little bit of water, it springs up and it flourishes and it becomes a pasture land for animals. So a lot of times when you look at things in life, it can seem like this is a bleak desert. It seems like, oh, there's no water here. There's nothing to sustain us as we're walking through this place. But all you need to do is get a little bit of the rain of Holy Spirit onto it. A little bit of that water of the Word, and suddenly what looks lifeless starts springing up and starts blossoming and starts creating newness of life. The word midbar, and we've mentioned this before, comes from the word davar, which is word. So midbar can mean in the wilderness, but it can also mean from or of the Word. Well, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Well, even when you're talking about being in the wilderness, it's about the Word. In the wilderness, in that place of words, is where the children of Israel came out of their Egypt, and they came to listen and hear the Word of God. They came to learn His voice. How many times do we tend to, and you have people who are split pretty much equally down the middle. Some people love the city. They just want to go to the city. That's what, if they take a vacation, it's always to cities. And then you have some people who like the wilderness. They like to go to places that are remote, that there's not a lot of people in, that it's quiet, that you can be in nature. And I think that when you start looking through the Word, you very rarely see that Yahweh is leading people to the cities. Like, just go look through the Bible and it says that He took them from somewhere to bring them somewhere. It's very rarely, I take you from the wilderness and I bring you into a city. It's usually I bring you from the city out into the wilderness. And in Christianity, the idea of a wilderness can kind of have a negative connotation. You know, how many times have you heard a believer say, I'm in the wilderness season of my life? Well, I look at that, because I am a person who likes the wilderness, I look at that a little bit differently. I look at that as, okay, you're in a place where you are in the most opportune location to be able to hear the still small voice of God. In the bustle, in the hubbub of the city, in the traffic, and the noise, and the people going here and there, it's a lot harder to focus. It's a lot harder to hear the voice of God. And when Yahweh brings them out of Egypt, and he's bringing them to the promised land, he's bringing them through this place so that he can train them to hear his voice. He's bringing them to a training ground, really. And so a wilderness is a place of training. So, you know, there's an instance in Psalm 63 where David is talking, and he's in a wilderness, and he's not just out, he's in the Judean wilderness, and he's not just out there to go for a hike. He's out there running from Saul. And in the midst of his running from Saul and being in this barren land, in verse 1, he says, "Oh God, you are my God. I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh faints for you in a dry and weary land where no water is." So here's David in the midst of this situation in his life where Saul's hunting him down. He's in the middle of this dry and barren land. But in this dry land, he's longing for God. He's not longing for water. He's not longing for shelter, not for vengeance against Saul. He's longing for God. And there's something, like I said, about stepping away from the noise where all of a sudden it turns your attention entirely on him. It allows you to quiet down and focus on what he is speaking to you. What are the next steps I'm going to take? What does it say in Matthew 6:33? Yeshua says, "Seek first the kingdom of God, and then all these things will be added to you." When Yahweh brought his people out of Egypt into the wilderness, he didn't bring them out there and say, now you guys got to fend for yourselves, see if you can find water in this place. No, he provided for them. He brought them into that place, but he provided their food. He provided the water. He provided everything they need. Their sandals didn't even wear out the entire time they were wandering through that desert. So he brought them into that place to train them, but it wasn't a place of lack. They didn't lack anything. And again, that's where we need to change our thinking when we talk about wilderness seasons in life. It's not a place of lack. It's a place where you have to look to him as your source, not at things in the natural. You can't look at people in the natural. You can't look at the situation around you. You can't look at the economy around you. You got to look to him as your source, as the one that's providing for you. And then David remembers in verse 2, "I have looked upon you in the sanctuary, beholding your power and your glory. Because your merciful love is better than life, my lips will praise you. So will I bless you. As long as I live, I will lift up my hands and call on your name." So even in the midst of this place where he is, he can't get to the temple at this place. There's no temple really, but he can't even get to the tabernacle. He's running from Saul, but he invokes God's presence within his current situation. He brings God's presence there into the midst of where he is. So the wilderness is actually a very important place. It's an important place for Yahweh, and it's an important place for us because Yahweh is able to teach us things. Let's turn briefly, before we get into Numbers, let's turn over to 1 Kings chapter 19. We'll see somebody else who goes out into the wilderness and has an encounter with Yahweh. And just a little bit of background here. This story is about the prophet Elijah, and this is coming right after he's in this place where he has just won this challenge on Mount Carmel with the prophets of Baal, and fire comes down and consumes the sacrifice, and everybody says the Lord, he is God, and everything. And then you have this story here, which is very interesting. 1 Kings 19, verse 1. Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done and how he had slain all the prophets of Baal with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, "So let the gods do to me and more also, if I make not your life as the life of one of them by this time tomorrow." Then he was afraid and arose and went for his life, and came to Beersheba of Judah, over 80 miles and out of Jezebel's realm, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, and came and sat down under a lone broom or juniper tree, and asked that he might die. So he's obviously in a pretty bad place here, it's interesting because, the parables that Yeshua told, he tells about how the word is sown, and as soon as the word is sown, the enemy comes to try to steal that word. He tries to come and steal that revelation. On that mountain that day, Elijah very much knew who Yahweh was. It was tangible. He had just seen the power of God manifest, and all these false prophets are killed, and the Lord is God, and everybody knows that. But it's easy to walk away from an experience, no matter how impressive it might be, no matter how impactful it might be. It's easy to walk away from that experience and get distracted by something. And the enemy is a master of sending a distraction right at that moment when you're about to step over that line into a breakthrough in your life. He always will try to send a distraction to get you sidetracked so that you're not focusing on the greatness of God. He's trying to get you distracted so that you're not seeing the destiny that he has before you. And Elijah gets to the point where he wants to die. So the prophet of God who preaches all this great stuff, and at the end of 1 Kings 18, he runs ahead of Ahab, runs faster than Ahab's chariot, and he's clothed with the power of God. Now he's suicidal. And so he comes to this mountaintop experience, and now he finds himself, and interesting, it says it was a lone broom tree. So he's out there all by himself, and this wasn't necessarily a good wilderness experience for him. He wasn't just going out into the wilderness here to be with Yahweh. He's running, again, much like David was running from Saul. And so he's sitting under there, and he says in verse 4, "It is enough now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am no better than my fathers." So he's feeling bad for himself. He's obviously lost sight of how powerful God is, that, okay, if God did that on Mount Carmel, can't he rescue you from this one woman who's chasing you? When you stop and think of it. But there's no logic to what the enemy tries to convince you of. He can make a lie so believable that it overtakes your entire vision. Much like what we were talking about with the whole thing with the UN in Israel. He makes it so believable that people just buy it. And so in this point, he's convincing Elijah that it's over. This is it. His life's over. There's no point in any of this anymore. And he's sitting there. So, verse 5, as he lay asleep under the broom or juniper tree, behold, an angel touched him and said to him, "Arise and eat." He looked, and behold, there was a cake baked on the coals and a bottle of water at his head, and he ate and drank and lay down again. The angel of the Lord came a second time and touched him and said, "Arise and eat, for the journey is too great for you." So he arose and ate and drank and went in the strength of that food 40 days and nights to Horeb. Okay, that was some food. If that food gave him the strength to go 40 days and nights on a trek through the desert to the wilderness to Horeb. But where did Yahweh lead him at that point? To Horeb, the Mount of God. Okay, so at this point when Elijah is at his lowest point, notice he didn't even address anything that Elijah said at this point. His answer was, okay, eat something, sleep, eat something. All right, now I'm going to lead you to the mountain of God, and then I'll show you something. Okay, he didn't even address where he was at that point. He knew what needed to be done was to get him out of there and go to somewhere else. So he came to the mountain of God, verse 9. He came to a cave and lodged in it. And by the way, that cave is still there on the side of the mountain. And if you go on these trips that go to the real Mount Sinai, you can actually go up to Elijah's cave, which that's just something about that. I want to go there sometime. But it's amazing because they're finding this archaeological evidence of the things that are here in the Bible. The things that we read. This actually happened. This is a real story. These are real places. And God really spoke. There he came to a cave and lodged in it. Behold, the word of the Lord came to him. Again, remember what I said about the word devar being words. In the middle of the wilderness, the word came to him. And he said to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? It's a lot like Adam and Eve. Where are you, Adam? You know, God knew what he was doing there, but he wanted to see what Elijah's answer was. He replied, I have been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts, for the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. And I only am left, and they seek my life to take it away. And he said, go out and stand on the mount before the Lord. Again, never even addressed anything that Elijah said. The answer was not to argue with him in his head. The answer was to show him something that was a different picture than what he was focusing on. Go out and stand on the mount before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind rent the mountains and broke in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of gentle stillness and a still small voice. When Elijah heard the voice, he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood in the entrance of the cave. And behold, there came a voice to him and said, what are you doing here, Elijah? He said, I have been very jealous for the Lord of hosts because the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and slain your prophets with the sword. And I only am left, and they seek my life to destroy it. And the Lord said to him, go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus. When you arrive, anoint Hazael to be king over Syria, and anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, to be king over Israel, and anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat of Abel-Meholah, to be prophet in your place. And him who escapes from the sword of Hazael, Jehu shall slay, and him who escapes the sword of Jehu, Elisha shall slay. Yet I will leave myself 7,000 in Israel, all the knees that have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him. So Elijah left there, and that's when he finds Elisha. So it's interesting. He comes to meet him in the midst of that place where Elijah's at. But Elijah had to get to the place where he realized that it was the still small voice. Not the chaos, not the, oh, this is happening and this is happening and this is happening and now they're after me. That's getting caught up in the commotion that's going on. You got to come away where you can hear the still small voice. And, you know, when you think of it, how many times did Yeshua himself go out to the remote places to pray? Luke 5:16, Yeshua often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. Another translation says he often withdrew into the wilderness for prayer. So at the times when we are finding ourselves surrounded by the voices of the enemy, we have to get into a place where we still those voices so we can hear the voice of the shepherd. You know, it says that my sheep will follow me and they will know my voice, and the voice of a stranger they're not going to follow. But we have to know how to discern his voice. Remember we were talking about the tribe of Issachar and how they were men who knew the times that they lived in. They were men of discernment. The definition of discernment means to judge well with the goal of obtaining and maintaining spiritual guidance and understanding. So it's separating out the different voices. Is this the voice of God or is this the voice of God? Is this me? Is this the enemy? Is this God's voice? You have to be able to discern the difference. You have to know. John 10, I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep and my sheep know me. My sheep listen to my voice. I know them, and they follow me. So when Elijah's out there in the wilderness, he basically comes to the point where he's like, God, I don't know where to go next. I don't know what to do next. I need your guidance. And we all need to come to that place in our life. Every day we need his guidance. We need to live in that place of, tell me the next step I'm to take. Tell me the next thing I'm supposed to do. And we need to also get to the point where part of us needs to die out there in the wilderness. I know that sounds bad. But if we think about it, what was the biggest thing that kept the Israelites in the wilderness? They weren't focusing on listening to the voice of God out in the wilderness. They were focusing on going back to Egypt, and we want this, and where's the water, and where's our food? And they were so caught up in the natural that they were missing the entire training ground that Yahweh had for them. But it requires courage, and it requires faith and trust to be able to enter into that promised land that Yahweh has for us. If we don't crucify the flesh, so to speak, if we don't get rid of the tendency to trust in the natural realm around us, then we're going to not be in a place where we're ready to step into the promised land that he has for us. Sometimes you have to unplug from something in order to connect to something. You know, think of it, even if you go out camping out in the woods and you look up into the sky and you see stars up there. It's like, wow, I've never seen so many stars. Well, the stars are always up there. It's just the noise, the pollution of the city lights around that keep you from being able to see them. And in the same way, Yahweh's guidance is always there, but sometimes there's so much pollution from the busyness, from the noise on the line around us, that we got to step away from the noise to hear him. Hosea 2:14, Yahweh's speaking about Israel. Behold, I will allure her and bring her into the wilderness and speak tenderly to her. And there will I give her vineyards and make the valley of Achor a door of hope. And there she shall answer as in the days of her youth, at the time when she came out of the land of Egypt. So the wilderness is not a bad place. The wilderness is not a dry and barren place where you're just suffering for the Lord. The wilderness is a place where you can hear his voice clearer, where you can find the direction, you can learn what his voice sounds like in the everyday life. So that when you step back into the place where you're stepping into your promised land, and when you step back into the busyness of life, you'll be able to hear that still small voice through the noise. You'll be trained and tuned into it, so that it's you're not going to be distracted by the stuff around you. But you have to know his voice first. And that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about, hearing his words. And that's what his training was all about in the book of Numbers. It was all about, this is what I want you to do so that you can know me in your world, so that you can know me. And then when you come into the land, and when you get all these things the cities you didn't build and the crops you didn't plant, then don't forget that I'm the one who got this for you. I'm the one who brought this for you. And it's not going to be a distraction to you, but it's going to be an assistance for you walking on your path with him.
So interesting in the book of Numbers, it also has to do with alignment. And what's interesting about that is tonight we are entering another month, 1 month already gone already, but we're going to be coming into the third month of Sivan. And with the month of Sivan, the thing that the month of Sivan is known for, it's the month of giving, it's the month of mercy, but it's also the month of alignment. And we're going to see that in the Torah portion in just a moment. But when you look at it, Sivan, we know, is when Moses received the Torah and the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai. And we know it's when the disciples received Holy Spirit during Pentecost. You know, we're about to come into Shavuot. You know, where we at the end of the week. So with the month of Sivan, the thing I'm going to focus on is the fact that it's the month of alignment. And we know that Yahweh is the God of order. He's the God of divine order. He's the God of alignment. So exactly what is alignment? Alignment is the state of being arranged and aligned or in proper position. When Yahweh aligns, it's always proper position. Okay, it's always in perfection. It's a position of agreement or alliance. So when we read Numbers, when he was aligning the tribes, their part was to be in a position of agreement, in a position of alliance to Yahweh. It's an agreement between a group of countries, parties, or people who want to work together because of a shared interest or aim. All right, so this is what alignment is. And this is what the month of Sivan is about. It's a time of alignment. It's a time of us as his people aligning with him aligning us to all work together for one shared aim, one shared interest. So let's turn to Numbers. And obviously we're just getting into Numbers. So it starts out, chapter 1, and it's about the whole census of Israel's warriors, and it goes down through all the tribes and the sons and stuff like that, and it talks about how they were all numbered and everything like that, and from 20 years and upward, all the men who are able to go to war. And then it talks about the end of the chapter about how the Levites were exempted. But as you get into chapter 2, now I actually have a title here on chapter 2, and it's called the arrangement of the camps. Well, what's another word? Alignment. That's the alignment of the camps. So we're going to start out at Numbers chapter 2, verse 1. And it says, "The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying." Now, something about that. The Lord tells Moses and Aaron to divide the Israelites into groups around the tabernacle, as we're going to read. The focus that you want to pay attention to is that phrase, "The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron." Now, this phrase, "the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron," to Moses, occurs in every chapter of Numbers, except chapters 22 through 24, which is the story about Balaam. This repetition emphasizes the fact that the Lord was the source of these commands. Not that they were Moses' thoughts, not something that Moses dreamed up, but he was the source of these commands. And just as a side note, whenever you hear, the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, whenever the Lord speaks, it's good. Whenever the Lord speaks, it's for your benefit. Whenever the Lord speaks, it's because he's going to turn the wilderness into a beautiful place. So the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "The sons of Israel shall camp each by his own standard, with the banners of their father's household. They shall camp around the tent of meeting, but at a distance." Now there's a whole significance in that too, and we're going to get into that in a moment. Verse 3, "Those who camp on the east side toward the sunrise shall be of the standard of the camp of Judah by their armies, and Nahshon, the son of Amminadab, shall lead the sons of Judah. And his army as number totaled 74,600. Next to Judah on the east side, the tribe of Issachar shall encamp. And Nathaniel, the son of Zuar, shall lead the sons of Issachar. And his army as numbered totaled 54,400. Then also on the east side, the tribe of Zebulun, and Eliab, the son of Helon, shall lead the sons of Zebulun. And his army as numbered totaled 57,400. The total of the numbered men in the three tribes on the east side in the camp of Judah was 186,400 by their armies. They shall move out first on the march. On the south side shall be the standard of the camp of Reuben by their armies, and Eleazar the son of Shedeur shall lead the sons of Reuben, and his army as numbered totaled 46,500. Those who camp next to Reuben on the south side shall be the tribe of Simeon, and Shalumnel, the son of Jorishaddai, shall lead the sons of Simeon, and his army as numbered totaled 59,300. Then completing the south side, the tribe of Gad, and Elisaph, the son of Reuel, shall lead the sons of Gad, and his army as numbered totaled 45,650. The total of the number of men in these tribes on the south side in the camp of Reuben was 151,450 by their armies. They shall move out second on the march. Then the tent of meeting, the tabernacle, shall move out with the camp of the Levites in the middle of the other camps. Just as they camp, so shall they move out, every man in his place by their standards. Now catch how often we've heard the word standard. They've had their standard, and we're going to go over that. Verse 18, on the west side shall be the standard of the camp of Ephraim. By their armies, and Elishama, the son of Ammihud, shall lead the sons of Ephraim, and his army is numbered totaled 40,500. Besides Ephraim, on the west side, shall be the tribe of Manasseh, and Gamaliel, the son of Pedazur, shall lead the sons of Manasseh, and his army is numbered totaled 32,200. Then completing the west side shall be the tribe of Benjamin, and Abidan, the son of Gideoni, shall lead the sons of Benjamin, and his army is numbered totaled 35,400. The total of the numbered men of the three tribes on the west side in the camp of Ephraim was 108,100 by their armies. They shall move out in third place. Now you see this picture of alignment. Yahweh has got a perfect order to how he wants this done. On the north side shall be the standard of the camp of Dan. By their armies, and Ahiezer, the son of Ammishaddai, shall lead the sons of Dan, and his army as numbered totaled 62,700. Encamped next to Dan on the north side shall be the tribe of Asher, and Pagiel, the son of Okran, shall lead the sons of Asher, and his army as numbered totaled 41,500. Then completing the north side comes the tribe of Naphtali, and Ahira, the son of Enan, shall lead the sons of Naphtali, and his army is numbered totaled 53,400. The total of the numbered men of the three tribes on the north side in the camp of Dan was 157,600. They shall move out last, standard after standard. These are the men of the Israelites 20 years old and upward, as numbered by their fathers' households. The total of the numbered men of the camps by their armies, 603,550. But the Levites were not numbered with the other Israelites, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Thus the Israelites did as ordered according to everything the Lord had commanded Moses. So they camped by their standards, and so they moved out, everyone with his family clan, according to his father's household. Now, first thing I want to point out, is when Moses was leading them out of Egypt, they were one huge group of people, one big group of people. Then we see them come down there to the 12 tribes of Israel. But now here we see these tribes broken up into 4 camps. And there's 3 tribes within each camp. So Jake, can you show that picture real quick? So just to give you a visual, this is so you see the compass up in the left, north, west, east, south. You have the camp of Dan to the north. To the east, the camp of Judah. To the south, the camp of Reuben. And to the west, the camp of Ephraim. And you see the 3 tribes broken up in each one of those camps. And they're situated around the tent of meeting. They form the perimeter around the tent of meeting. And you see all the numbers of the different tribes and stuff, and then the total of all the camps, the 4 camps in there. So these are the camps that formed a perimeter around the tent of meeting for security, for protection, but they were to be kept at a distance because not only Yahweh's presence was there, but we know about getting too close to the presence of Yahweh at the wrong time. So, with this being said, on this occasion, the Lord commanded that the sons of Israel shall camp. Yahweh here is organizing the formation for the sons of Israel when they stopped traveling and set up camp in the wilderness. They were to camp each by his own standard, with the banners of their fathers' households. They shall camp around the tent of meeting at a distance. And as we saw later, the Israelites arranged themselves into a square, like that picture just showed, into a square on 4 sides, each side having 3 tribes each. Each group of 3 would be placed on one of the sides of the tabernacle. The tribe of Levi was to be divided according to its families and placed immediately around the tabernacle, thus providing a buffer between the other tribes in the tabernacle. So the orders of the phrases that we've seen, each by his own standard, with the banners of their fathers' households, the sons of Israel shall camp. Around the tent of meeting, at a distance they shall camp. The first phrase, each by his own standard, stresses that this command was directed to each and every Israelite. Each one was to gather by his own standard. A standard, which is the Hebrew word degel, was a banner that identified a group. It appears that each individual family was to gather with their own standard or their own banner around their father's households, and they were identified by these banners, which is the Hebrew word atot. Each family of each tribe was to congregate together and were to clearly identify themselves. So each banner had a color. They had their own color, and they had their own image on it, which I'm going to do in a second.
Just a word about the Hebrew word otot is the word that was used for the banner. That's the same word that was used when we were talking about the Passover story. And the blood shall be a sign for you upon the doorposts of your house. That word is the word ot. It's the word for, it's literally, the blood is going to be your standard. It's your banner above your house. So that's kind of interesting.
So this organization depicted a typical military structure. So, Yahweh knows what he's doing. He's a God of order. He's a God of alignment. Now, back when you look at verses 1 and 2, now the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, the sons of Israel shall camp each by his own standard. With the banners of their father's household, they shall camp around the tent of meeting at a distance. The tribes were to camp around the tent of meeting. They were to surround the tabernacle, completely encompassing it. This provided a strong defense perimeter. They were also to camp at a distance from the tabernacle. A holy Yahweh who dwelled in the tent of meeting could not be approached by someone who was not a priest and who was not clean. For the Lord to command them to camp at a distance showed his grace by warning them not to come near to him, as well as his holiness, since coming too close might have drastic results. So each banner, I'm going to go focus on that. Their standard was the banner, and each banner had a color and an image. We know what color is. We know that each color represents something. It means something. But the thing I want to focus on for a moment is the images that were on each one of these banners. So each of the 12 tribes had a colored banner. And we just saw that they were broken into groups of 3, and that the leading tribe in each of these triads had a standard representing their group. So the standard of the tribe of Judah, their banner contained the picture of a lion. The standard of the tribe of Reuben, the picture was the picture of man. The standard of the tribe that was headed by Ephraim contained the picture of an ox. The standard of the tribes headed by Dan contained the picture of an eagle. So the symbol on these various tribal standards are important in view when we read about the same thing in Ezekiel and in Revelation. And when you read about that, you see them in view of the cherubim in Ezekiel 1:10. So let's turn to there for a second. So Ezekiel 1:10. And it says, regarding the form and appearance of their faces, they each had the face of a man in front, and each had a face of a lion on the right side, and the face of an ox on the left side, and all 4 also had the face of an eagle at the back of their heads. Now, when Ezekiel saw this, now like I said, this is in reference to Revelation also, he saw them with each having 4 faces. Faces are aspects. Their appearances. It's what they look like to others who see them. So these living creatures were beside Yahweh at his throne and surrounding Yeshua. They reflected the appearance and image of Yeshua. So with these tribes, these camps, each one of those banners having these pictures, they were reflecting the image of Yeshua. We see Yeshua from beginning to end throughout the entire book. So Yeshua, we look at the symbol of the lion. Well, we know he is the King of Kings. And what is a lion? A lion is a symbol of kingship. It represents the king of the jungle, okay? In the next one, the picture of the ox or the calf, Yeshua was the sacrifice for all who called upon him. Well, the ox and the calf was one of the popular animals that were used in sacrifices. Then you see the other image of man on the banner, and it represented Yeshua becoming a man for us. He was the Son of Man. When he came down to be able to perfect all of us in him. And it is the representation of his face on the banner. And then the last one was with the eagle. And when we read it in Revelation, Yeshua's judgment is swift and certain. It's like an eagle that is swift and it's got an assignment. But it also reflects sovereignty and deity. So when you look at those images, like I said, the way Yahweh aligned things, and he picked, you could have picked any image in the world, okay? He didn't put an elephant on the banner, okay? He didn't put a crocodile or whatever. He didn't put a squirrel, okay? He put these four things: a lion, an ox, man, and an eagle. The four things that represented who Yeshua was. So
yeah, so it's interesting with the banner, and we're grafted into the tribes of Israel. We're the ones who are part of the goyim that were brought into it. So what would our standard be? What would our banner be? If everybody's camping under their banner, well, do we have a banner? And it's interesting because in the Song of Songs 2 verse 4, it says, "He brought me to the banqueting house, and his banner over me was love." Well, how much do we see love spoken about in the New Testament? How many times do you see it talked about? John 13:35, "By this everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another." Love is the symbol of believers. That's our banner. We are of the camp of love. That's what we march under. That's the sign that we march under. And that's what Yahweh's called us to do. So it's interesting how he brings everything together in this symbolism. He doesn't leave away the symbolism of the tribes, but he comes in and says, yeah, I'm bringing you in, and now your banner is love.
So, like I said, we're coming into the month of alignment. And we see this in Numbers with the tribes and stuff. And I came upon this commentary that I thought was really interesting because it just nailed it right on the head, where it's talking about Israel's order around the tabernacle. Another word for alignment. It was their order. They were supposed to be in a specific order around the tabernacle. So these are the ones who were numbered of the children of Israel by their fathers' houses. All who were numbered according to their armies of the forces were 603,550. But the Levites were not numbered among the children of Israel, just as the Lord commanded Moses. Thus the children of Israel did according to all that the Lord commanded Moses. So they camped by their standards, and so they broke camp, each one by his family, according to their fathers' houses. These are the ones who were numbered of the children of Israel by their fathers' houses. The total of 603,550 available soldiers were ordered around the tabernacle. This was the number of men available as soldiers among the tribes of Israel, excluding the tribe of Levi. So they camped by their standards. Each tribal group was arranged after the standards of the tribes, and they broke camp and marched in that same order. So they were arranged in an order, then they broke and they marched in that same order. In the marching forth from Mount Sinai, the tribes dutifully and faithfully adhere to these instructions for orderly encampment, assembly and disassembly of the tabernacle, and disembarkment on the journey through the wilderness. This verse also speaks of significant order. What have we been talking about? Yahweh is the God of order. A major accomplishment for a people so numerous. Think about it. Okay, we try to get together, 15, 20 people, and it's like herding cats, for goodness sakes, okay? But all these people, and people so numerous, they got them into the proper order. So a major accomplishment for a people so numerous, so recently enslaved, and more recently a mob in disarray. Think of it. They were murmuring and complaining. They were coming out of the wilderness, murmuring and complaining and all this stuff against Moses and Aaron, and one point we're going to stone them and blah, blah, blah. But they all come together. They're able to bring this large group of people into order, into an alignment, so they can accomplish what Yahweh wanted them to accomplish, all under Yahweh's direction. Remember what I said in the beginning, that very important phrase, and the Lord spoke. When the Lord speaks, he knows what he's talking about. When the Lord speaks, evil gets turned to good. When the Lord speaks, whatever the enemy's trying to do in our lives gets totally obliterated. So keep that phrase. So that the text speaks well of the administrative leadership of Moses, who was actually a reluctant servant of Yahweh. Okay, he was reluctant. But of the work done by the 12 worthies who were the leaders of each tribe. So the first one, Yahweh is a God of order. Here, before Israel can take the promised land, he requires they order themselves also. Before we can take our promised land, we have to get into order. Not only is it more efficient and useful, but it is also simply more like Yahweh, ordered and organized. Now, come on, we know that if things are a lot more difficult to do, to accomplish, if they're not ordered and organized. If you go into your a lot of us have junk drawers in our kitchen, okay, and usually these junk drawers are not organized at all, okay, and you're fishing through trying to find whatever it is that you're looking for, and it takes an amount of time and everything, as compared to as it was just organized, you know exactly where it is supposed to be, and you're able to just take it like that. There is a limit to what we can be and what we can do for the Lord without order and organization. It isn't that order and organization are requirements for progress, they are progress. Okay? They are progress. You're not going to get anywhere without order and organization. And I know we have some people in here that are like the heads of organizing everything and anything type of thing, okay? But you're not going to get anywhere unless you don't have your life ordered and organized under Yahweh's direction, becoming more like him. Nothing is accomplished in Yahweh's kingdom without order and organization. While it may sometimes seem that things progress randomly or chaotically, this is only how it appears to us. Behind the scenes, Yahweh always moves with order and organization. And even though sometimes we cannot perceive it or see it, he's the God of order. He does nothing out of alignment. He does nothing out of order. And we saw it when we were going through Leviticus, how everything was so detailed. He had everything specifically in order on how he wanted them to do things. It was precise. It was sharp, precise details. Even down to this needs, I know this doesn't say it in the word, I'm just using it as an example, paraphrase, but this needs to be 12 inches and 12 and 3/4 inches, okay? Not 12 and a half inches, 12 and 3/4 inches. He was so precise in his detail and his order of things. Yahweh orders things according to his wisdom, not our wisdom. And most times when we do things our own way, that's how we end up getting in trouble. In the arrangement of the tribes, now catch this, in the arrangement of the tribes, he did not place the largest tribes closest to the tabernacle, as if bigger was always better. Ephraim, the closest westward tribe, was the third smallest tribe. Nor did the Lord place all the large tribes on the outward perimeter for greatest protection. Benjamin, the second smallest tribe, is on the outer perimeter. Where's Benjamin? So Benjamin, 35,400 people. Okay, the smallest tribe is on the outer perimeter. Yahweh always works with order and organization, but the reasons for his order and organization may not always make sense to us. How many times have we heard that? How many times have we experienced it? Well, wait a minute, that does not make sense at all. But he knows what he's doing. Okay, he's the God of order. Our resistance to Yahweh's order and organization is almost always the product of simple selfishness, wanting to do things our own way instead of his way. For hundreds of years, the Israelites lived as slaves in Egypt, and slaves don't need to worry much about order and organization. Okay, think about it. They really don't. They're told what to do and often have no personal investment in the success of their work. In contrast, free men must be taught the principles of order and organization, and they must submit to these principles in order for it to be successful. Everything was positioned in relation to the presence of Yahweh in the tabernacle. Yahweh could have described where the tribe of Judah was in relation to the tribe of Dan, but he did not. The reference point was always Yahweh himself. It is hard to underestimate the challenges people get into in their walk with Yahweh because they position and measure themselves in reference to other people or into what they think instead of him. Yahweh is to be our focus, not other people, not ourselves. We got to focus on him and how Holy Spirit is leading us. The tribes of Israel camped around 4 banners, which bared the images of a lion, which was Judah, a man, which was Reuben, a calf or ox, which was Ephraim, and an eagle, which was Dan. These standards bore these images, and they were a remarkable correspondence, like I just said earlier, with the 4 creatures that surround Yahweh's throne in Revelation. The first living creature was like a lion, the second living creature like a calf. The third living creature had the face like a man, and the fourth living creature was like a flying eagle. That's in Revelation 4:7. These are the same images that were on the standards or the banners of the camps. Yahweh's order is never arbitrary or just made up on a whim. It is after his pattern. We must always accept his order and organization, his pattern, even if we don't understand it. Even if we know this is Yahweh's way of doing something, this is his order, this is his pattern, and you've got, everybody else saying, man saying, people saying, that's not the way Yahweh would be calling you to do it. That's not how Yahweh would show you to do that. That's not the answer. That's not his pattern. He has a pattern. You follow his pattern, not man's pattern. You follow his way, not man's way, because his is in perfect alignment with your destiny. You follow him and you're obedient to him, and everything that he says to do is the perfect path right to victory, right to success. So everything with these tribes and the camps and the numbers and stuff, like it said, bigger is not always better, okay? The smallest of people can be the most ferocious, can be the most strong, okay? Mom. Just because you're a huge tribe does not necessarily mean you're the one that's going to get the work done correctly. Look at us. Prime example. We could relate to Benjamin. We're not 35,400. The 35 might be right, but, but look at this camp. Everything that we have accomplished, everything that we've done, and all because we follow Yahweh's leading, all because he has a specific order and a pattern for this congregation. He has a specific order and pattern for everybody, but ours is specific for ours. We have our own standard. Okay, we have our own banner. We have our own color. And it's the one that he's given to us. And it's the one that we will obediently and willingly follow and obey. And see the victory that we've already seen so many times through what he's done with us, just in this small camp. So like I said, bigger is not always necessarily better. It's usually the few that get the job done. Is that it? Oh, okay. Well, on that note, remember that. I just thought this was really interesting when we found this picture last night. It just gives you a good visual and a good thing of how they're encamped around and they form that perimeter and in the order of things. Like I said, he's the God of divine order. And each one of us, he has a divine order specifically picked out for each and every one of us. And it's a divine order, when followed properly, will lead us to success in every area of our lives. Amen. Well, thank you for all those of you joining us out on Facebook. We hope that you gathered something from today. We will not be having a Bible study on Tuesday night, but we will be here Thursday night at 6:30 for our Shavuot service. So be sure that you join us then.